Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Share and Read. Today I'll be doing my January wrap up. Before I get started, if you're new to this channel, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below as well as hit the notification bell. But January was not the greatest start of my 2023 year so far. I only managed to read 9 books, which meant I read a total of 3,760 pages. So not the best month. I feel like my better months have been over 5,000 or so pages, and this didn't even reach 4,000. But out of those 9 books, I read 2 books 3 stars, 5 books that were 4 stars, 1 book that was 4.5 stars, and then 1 book that was 5 stars. So in terms of quality, I'm pretty happy with it. I read most of them 4 stars and up, just a couple of 3-star reads, but they're still pretty good overall. The first book I want to talk about is The Companion by Katie Allender. This book I gave 4 stars. This book follows a girl called Margot who is extremely lucky in the sense that she managed to survive the accident that killed the rest of her family. And now she's put into the social service foster home kind of situation, and she's considered lucky there because she has her home room to herself because she screams every single night and thus waking up her roommates if she had one. So everyone there calls her very lucky because, you know, she has her own privacy, her own space, but of course she has a lot of downside to it. One day she ends up being fostered into this really rich family who turns out to be acquaintances of her father from college, and now she goes there and she's tasked with basically babysitting and overlooking their daughter Agatha, where something happened to her like a year or 2 ago where she basically is now like very sick and can't do anything herself. She's basically robotic and can't think for herself. So Margot at the beginning was just like, you know, just grateful that she is out of this like foster care home type of situation, this group home, and she's put into this very extremely wealthy family where she now has a life of like luxury in a way. But before long she starts realizing that something is off, and you know, now her true nightmares are beginning. This book was really fascinating. I was always wondering like what was happening. It definitely gave me some like creepy vibes as well because of the whole description of Agatha and kind of like her tendencies to just like be there and very quiet too. Like it was just eerie. So the entire time I was reading this book, I was able to very much picture everything that's happening. Like it was very vivid in my head. So I feel like the writing and the plot and the characters were just really well done here. And then in terms of the ending, definitely caught me by surprise. I was not expecting it at all. I feel like, okay, well no, about halfway through the book I started to get an inkling of what was going to happen and like, you know, what was truly happening behind everything, and I was right. But the way how it was revealed and like the extent of what was happening was wild. So definitely enjoy the ending there. But yeah, if you're looking for a really good like eerie thriller, a little bit of horror, just a tad bit of horror, I highly recommend this book. The next book I picked up is Song of Silver Flame Like Night by Emily Wenzel. This book I gave 4 stars. This book follows a girl called Lan who apparently holds the key to discovering the secrets of her nation's past. But ever since the invaders killed off her mother, she has gone into hiding and spends her night as a song girl while also trying to do everything she can to find out about this mysterious mark on her arm. One day this guy appears and he saves her life, and his name is Zen. Zen is a practitioner of magical arts, and he was able to recognize the mark on her arm for what it is. And now they basically go on this adventure to find out more answers about this mark. What is its meaning? What's behind it? What is its hiding? Etc. And this was so much more than I expected. I really love the magical element to this book. I thought it was really fascinating to read about the demons and just kind of like how they played a role in the past and the history of this nation. I also like the fact that this book primarily took place in this magical school that's steeped in Chinese mythology, Chinese folklore, culture, and history. I thought it was really well done. There was one review that I saw that I think really encapsulates kind of like the vibe of this book, and it was kind of like Shadowhunters but Chinese, if that makes any sense. And I feel like that's so true because there are these demons, there are these, you know, weapons, these magical arts that they use, and then there is like this school that they can go to, and there were just a lot of similarities between the two worlds. but like obviously very different culture and a lot of like cultural context because of the differences. I'm not sure if I want to pick up the second book because while I really enjoyed this first one, I feel like the writing and the audience is a little bit on the younger side for me, which is fair. Like this is a YA book, it's catered towards YA and young adult readers, like that's fine. But I just feel like now that I'm getting older, this book very much resonated with me in the sense that it could have been really good for me back when I was like in my early 20s versus my current age. So that was my only like issue with this book, and that's more of like a personal thing than it is a book thing or like a writing thing, which is why I'm not entirely sure if I want to pick up the second book. But I still really want to give credit where credit's due, and this book is really good with what, you know, it's given audience and the writing, the culture behind it. So highly recommend this book either way. The next book I picked up is Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko. This book I gave 4.5 stars. This is the sequel to Raybearer, which I absolutely adored. I feel like I didn't really know what to expect going into that book. I just heard a lot of people loving it and everything, and I picked it up last year and I was like, blew my mind about how good it was, and I immediately picked up the second book, or I purchased the second book. Didn't get a chance to pick it up until, you know, January, and again I was astounded by the richness, the writing, the characters, and while it wasn't as amazing as the first book, I still feel like the ending and just everything about the plot just ended so well for me that this definitely deserves 4.5 stars. Obviously, I'm not going to go too much into this book because this is the sequel and the finale of a duology, but the first book follows a girl called Foundry Side who was raised by the lady, who is this mysterious woman that she never really saw, and one day she was given this task of, you know, basically going to the prince and becoming one of his council, which meant that she is now one of the inner circle of the prince, and basically the goal was to kill off the prince. Obviously, as the book progresses, she finds herself in the council of the 11, and things kind of transpire from there, and she realizes that, you know what, I actually like this guy and I don't really want to kill him, and you know, a lot of like situation kind of happened from there. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. Like I said already, highly recommend this book. I also just got my friend to read it, and she is already like 2/3 of the way done, and she just started like a day or two ago, so she's loving it. So I feel like if you're looking for really good fantasy that's steeped in culture and magic, I highly recommend this series. Next book I picked up, It's All in How You Fall by Sarah Henning. This book I gave 3 stars. This book follows a girl, her name is Caroline. She is a gymnast where she spent the past 10 years grinding away, trying to be an Olympian gymnast and just doing all the training, the practice, etc. And one day she starts to get this back pain from her, you know, while she's doing her routine, and she finds out from a doctor that she might need to retire at the age of 15 years old. Of course she refuses. She goes back into, you know, the gym, and things start to happen, and she finds herself back at the doctor telling her that what she has is extremely serious and now she can no longer practice at all. So while she is obviously in depression, trying to, you know, rethink her entire life, because she always had this one goal ever since she was 5 years old, and now her dream has shattered, trying to find herself again, and she goes on this journey with a childhood friend, technically it's her brother's best friend, where she tries out all these different sports and see if she has a new alternate dream for herself. I thought this book was okay. This is a book that I feel like I should have DNF'd, to be quite honest. I felt like it was interesting, but it never really grabbed my attention. I mostly just continued on the book because I was already reading it and I was listening to an audiobook, and it just kind of flew by. So before I knew, I was already like almost halfway through, and I was like, well, I might as well just finish it by this point. Even though I did feel like it dragged on a little bit, the writing was okay. I didn't really care too much about the characters. The romance was like coming from a mile away. Like everyone who read the synopsis already knew what the romance would entail, and there was no surprises there. But if you're looking for just a cute, fluffy romance that has a bit of a serious undertone to it, I still recommend this one. I just don't think this was the book for me personally, but at the same time I did speed through it on audiobook, so clearly it didn't bore me entirely. So that's a good thing. Next book I picked up is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This book I gave 3 stars. I am honestly shooketh by this book because I loved Spinning Silver, and I gave that book 5 stars. Everyone that talked about this book with me at that time was like, you need to read Uprooted. It's very similar vibe. It's even better. I love it even more. This book, I don't know, like it was just an okay read. Like I never felt very connected to the characters, the plot, like nothing was amazing for me. And to be quite honest, I feel like there's another book that I should just DNF because I trudged. Like this book dragged on and I could not find myself, but at the same time I was like, I really love her books, I love her writing, I love the folklore that she writes. And unfortunately, like Spinning Silver for me is still by far superior, like extremely superior compared to this book. This book was just okay. That being said though, the one redeeming factor about this book is that the magic element in it was extremely beautiful. I love the way how the magic was written and the magic system. I thought that was really fascinating, but that was kind of it for me. Like everything else was just okay. Even like the romance in here was weird. Like it didn't feel like it was very necessary, and it felt like the author just put it in there just to be like, there's romance in here and like call it a day, but it didn't feel natural. So unfortunately, I feel like this book was just not the same as Spinning Silver, even though people just kept comparing the two, and I don't think they're anything similar at all except for like the writing style maybe, but that's it. The next book I picked up is You Are Not Alone by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This book I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. This book definitely caught me by surprise. This book basically follows a woman called Shay Miller, where she wants to find love, but it is nowhere to be found. She also wants to find a good life, but her job is kind of a dead end, and she wants to belong, but she is incredibly lonely. One day she ends up going to the train in New York City and she witnesses a woman committing suicide, and from there she becomes increasingly obsessed with this woman, and somehow her life gets entangled with these 2 sisters. Their names are Jane and Cassandra, where they lead these extremely glamorous lives, and suddenly she is wrapped up in their lives while not knowing what is truly happening. This book was wild. I felt very like it was going in so many different directions. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't really understand a lot of like the subplots to it because it just was just a surprise to me, but in a good way. Like this was definitely a book that kept me at the edge of my seat because I wanted to know what was happening. I wanted to find out more, and there was so much that was happening, guys, like from Shay's perspectives and then from the sisters' perspectives, and kind of like the things that they were doing to each other and if they had ulterior motives or not. Like there was just a lot going on, not to mention there's a whole like subplot about her roommate and love and her roommate's girlfriend, and just a lot of like situation there as well. There's a lot going on, but like the way how the book was written and just how everything flowed together was really well done. So highly recommend this book if you're looking for a really good thriller suspense type of novel. Now moving on to my favorite book that I read in January, and that is Kaiakei by Vaishnavi Patel. Really hoping I pronounced the name correctly. This book obviously I gave 5 stars. This was also the book that I read for my book club, and I can happily say that everyone loved this book. Like everyone was talking about it, they all really enjoyed it. Like the writing, there's a lot to discuss too in terms of the characters and the mythology that it stemmed from, and the cultural references, and you know the feminist messages in here, the familial aspects, just a lot of like different messages in this book. And I just thought the author did an incredible job. And not to mention, like she's what, like in college or something, like I want to, yeah, she's a law student. Like that's wild. The fact that she wrote this masterpiece of a book is just phenomenal. Like I could never, but obviously I highly commend her for writing this. It was just so freaking good. This book basically follows Kaiakei, and she is like, I don't really know if it's like a mythology or like a folklore per se, but she was always, according to one of the book club members, because she's Indian and she gave us more of a cultural like background and history on this character, she was always depicted as a like a bad person. And so this book kind of talked about like a prequel to what like the folklore kind of goes into in the future, and talks about like what events led her to make those decisions in the future. I don't know what those decisions are because I didn't read the actual folklore, but this is basically a prequel novel of the folklore of Kaiakei, or like mythology of her. And this was fascinating, and I just love like how the writing went too, because I feel like there's always this build up and suspense on, you know, the future. It was always alluding to the future, like in the future they will always see me as so and so, or in the future, you know, this, they'll always refer back to this moment and always be like, I always knew she hated him, I always knew that, you know, she was bad, etc, etc. And there's like so many references like that that it just kept me on the edge of my seat. I was like, what's going to happen? Like, everything seems perfect right now. Like, you have a great husband, even though this was an arranged marriage. And her husband was honestly like such a feminist too. Like, he was all about like, you know, making choices and not being like the male in the relationship. He was always like very understanding, very protective, like not in a very like ogre like way, but like in a very like good way. Like, I don't know, there's just so many about him that was just like not what you expect from like cultural expectations. And even she knew that. She was like, my husband's great, you know, and her other sister wives are like her best friends, you know. And I feel like I always see, like, I was expecting them to be like vapey and like evil and like mean to her, and they were just not. They were like great friends. They were like, they got along well together. Like, her life was amazing. So the entire time I was just like, what's gonna happen? Like, I need to know. Like, I just came to the edge of my seat because I was like, something clearly is gonna happen that's going to make this whole thing like go downhill for her, and I'm just waiting for that build up right now. And when that time came, it was extremely well done. I was very like invested with the story, and it was just wild, guys. Like, I highly recommend this book if you're looking for an amazing book that's steeped in culture, in folklore / mythology, as well as some like really intense messages about like what it's like to be a woman and kind of like your wifely duties, especially in an Indian culture. So I highly recommend this book. Now, this next book I picked up is You'll Miss Me When I'm Gone by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This book I gave 4 stars. This book basically follows the set of twins where one is a viola prodigy, and she already has her future mapped out for her with her career in playing the viola. And then the other sister is Tova, where she is an overachiever and all she wants to do is go to Johns Hopkins and become a surgeon there. And the thing is, their mother actually passed away from Huntington's disease. So now that they're 18 years old, they get tested to see if this is something that is positive for them, and you know, just so they know for the future. One of them becomes positive and one of them ends up negative. And now this book kind of follows the aftermath of what it means for them for their future. What should they do, because one of them doesn't really have a future, especially the fact that Huntington's can exhibit itself from a very wide range of like time. So you can be like your 20s, 40s, 60s, all that stuff. Like, it can be very late in your life, and it can also happen in a couple years. So they're facing with the whole question of like, should I live my life still knowing that this is there? Should I even find love, because knowing that this is something that can be passed on genetically? Like, there's a lot of questions that was raised in this book, and I thought that the author did a really good job with just making the reader think a lot, because I don't really know much about Huntington's disease. So I found it really fascinating to read more about this disease, as well as the implications of what it means to know that you will have this in your future, and how like your life changes, or like your mentality on life changes drastically. So if you're looking for a really good, like, I don't even know how to describe it, it's like a contemporary, but it's like hard-hitting for sure. A lot of questions about life and mortality and future and your dreams, all that stuff. Like, if you're looking for all of that, I highly recommend this one. Then the last and final book I picked up is Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. This book I gave 4 stars. This book follows a girl called Sansia, who is a really good fucking thief. With this last job, she needs to go and steal something from this warehouse, which for her is a piece of cake. Unknowingly, she steals an artifact that is extremely powerful with very detrimental results to, you know, like the world that she lives in now. It is essentially an object that can revolutionize magical technology, and having this changes, it's like basically a game changer. And this book was wild. So I had read this during my trip to Hawaii, and this is the only book that I finished, because it did take me like the entire 10 days to like finish this book, because it was not slow, but it definitely was not one that was like super action packed, you know, like I was like, I need to finish it, etc. Like, that was not the case with this book at all. It was very much a book that had a lot of depth to it. It was a little dense. I really need to learn about the magic system in the world, and it's very rich as well, which is all good things in the fantasy, but not the best thing when you're on vacation and you're just trying to read something a little bit lighthearted. Like, I made a mistake of bringing this with me because it took me 10 fucking days to finish one book, which is wild. That being said though, I really like the magic, I really like the characters, I found it really fascinating. I don't know if I'm going to continue on the series because while I enjoy the book, I don't know if I loved it enough for me to continue. And right now, with just so many books coming out, I find myself being a lot pickier with what I want to read for series and just DNFing in general. So that's why I'm like, I might DNF the series even though I really enjoyed this first book. So I don't know, let me know down below like what your thoughts are. Like, if you have read the series, do you think I should DNF it or not, like the rest of the series? Because this is definitely one that I am a little bit on the fence. So let me know what your thoughts are down below. But that's all I'm gonna say for this video. Read a total of 9 books and some really amazing books. Like Kaiakei was like phenomenal. Like, I'm still like gushing over it because it was just so fucking good. But let me know down below, which books have you read for the month of January? Have you read any of these books before, and did you agree with my ratings and like what I thought about them? But as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up if it does help out my channel. And if you like to see more content of me, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below, as well as the notification bell. And as always, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.